Elizabeth, welcome to In the Weeds.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me on my patio today. So, this is a kind of segment that I'm trying out where I basically just talk with people about things they're kind of working through and, just giving space for people to kind of think and wrestle through, like, what it means to, like, weed your life. And so, before we get going in the conversation, why don't you just give a little bit of an introduction of who you are for people who don't know you, and then, if there's anything on your mind of, like, that you're personally trying to weed through, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, okay. I'm Elizabeth. I'm 29 years old and I live in Wormerveer with my husband Johannes. Nu weet ik het niet meer. Oh.
No, it's okay. So, what excites you?
Oh,
What do you find interesting?
At this moment, I think the Russian language.
Oh.
I'm studying Russian for a while now, and also I'm also studying theology, so that's also something I'm busy with. So.
Yeah, because religion's something sort of new to you.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
And so I think for you, that's still that sort of exciting process of like learning about it.
Yeah, there is a lot to learn. Yeah.
And what got you interested in it? Like everybody has such a different path of like what gets you down that road, but.
Oh, well, I think it started now 3 years ago. Yeah. And I was a little bit religious, but like more New Age kind of things. And I never really, I knew nothing about Christianity. And the things that I knew were like boring to me and not interesting. The only thing I can remember was that I was at like the burial of my grandfather in the Roman Catholic Church. And if that's your only thing you know about church, then it's not really really interesting. And then one of my best friends at that time, who is now my husband, was reading about Christianity and really thinking about God, if God exists. And then we started talking about that a little bit. And but then at some point he said like, yeah, I'm reading the Bible. And and I was like, okay.
It's sort of strange in the Netherlands, right? When people become religious or particularly religious.
Well, yeah. And especially in my environment, I know no one who is religious. Like nobody for my friends or family, no one. So and then I saw at his room like a Bible with all kinds of notes in it. And then I was like, oh, you're really serious about this? And then I read one book, and it was the book by C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. And I think that was for me like the turning point, or like I read that and I was like, oh, is this Christianity? And then so that
like
was
planted the seeds that grew into something bigger.
Yeah.
Was it nice to have, Johannes with you on that journey to like have that back and forth?
Oh yeah. I think it was like the most important part of it. And we also feel like, like God had this plan for us, like bringing us together and having this journey together. Yeah.
Well, thanks. I mean, I think that's a good kind of foundation. So something that I always do with this is use this book. What is it? The Heart. Yeah, Garden of the Heart. I didn't want to get the title wrong. And it's sort of the spiritual diary by Alexander Romanov to kind of just use something from it as a jumping off point to like start conversation. But when I was doing this, you were watching them and saying, oh, I have that book. It is really good. So instead of me picking something out, I asked you if you would pick something out. So you've got a couple things to read, and then we'll kind of just use that as a jumping off point to, see where it goes. So I'm excited to see what stuck out to you because there's just so much in there.
Yeah, I think I read this book a few times, and at home I have like a lot of marked things. But now I just opened it and I saw this one. Everyone has their place, and everyone is important in their place. The smallest and least significant have their places too, and it is necessary for all the small places to be filled as well as the places occupied by the most important and significant personalities.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Why did that stick out to you personally?
I think like since when I was young, I have always like searched for my identity, and like when you're not religious or like you don't have something higher maybe, then what what is it going to be? Like
Yeah.
you have to think about it yourself. And I also feel like I never really found that,
Yeah.
like my place. What is my place? And I have tried like a lot of now, bad things that also never brought me to my real place, like the
Right.
place that God has for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so now I feel like in the church and with faith, like now, yeah, I hope that I will will end up in my place. What is really my place?
Yeah. Well, and it's not so
Yeah.
self-explanatory either, right? Like there's still this sense of like how do you discover that within that tradition? And like I think knowing you personally, like knowing that I think both of us individually are trying to figure out what does that mean to fit in the place that we're supposed to be in like different ways and different stuff. And so for me, I don't know, it's just so striking because there's that sense of I think particularly in Americas, there's a sense of like always trying to elevate your place, move up, be something bigger than you are, and this recognition that hey, maybe finding that peace in the place you are now and how it's developing you to be in the place you were meant to be. That's really there's something beautiful about that, but it's also very challenging because it's sort of like how do you even really discern or like sense when you've found that place?
Yeah, that's really hard
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, for you, how has that been? How have you shifted in your sense of trying to identify place and identity within a church frame that you didn't have when you kind of were, I guess, basically figuring it out all your own, just to, yeah, sensing what feels good and just figuring it out.
Yeah. I think first, like when I had no church, it's also more like you try to find a place where others can see you. Like, I don't know, like you want to be seen, or for example, I got a lot of tattoos, and that was, I thought, like my identity. But when you really think about it, it's nothing. It doesn't say anything about who you are, or like it's more like how you want to look, or like something like that. And I feel now like you have to go like inside yourself and feel like inside, like in your heart, and like where you need to be, and that you find the peace in your heart instead of like in outside
Yeah.
things.
Well, and it's so, I think for me, because I've always been religious, grew up very religious, but for the last probably 5 years have become Orthodox and moving into this space. And I think at times it feels like this extension of my faith, but a loss of my religion, and having to like relearn the process of what it is to be in this new order of things and this new kind of narrative and story. But there's something really interesting about the way I've heard it explained in the Orthodox frame of like our identity is it nested within the relationship of people, and how the church together can help us in shaping our identity by working together on this spiritual path towards something bigger than yourself. Yeah, how is that? Have you had that sense of like the relationality of being within a church, of people moving towards that similar thing, shaping who you are and like where you think your place should be?
Well, yeah, I think it really helps because you know, like what you said, like where you're working to.
Yeah.
And that's something without religion, you don't have it. Or like maybe even in other churches, you don't really have what we have because I feel like there is something for everything. En you... ik kom er even niet uit hoor.
Do you know what it is in Dutch? No.
Nee, ik kom er even niet uit, sorry.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I think for me there's this... Yeah, because, yeah, Ferdy and I had a similar experience where we did not become Orthodox because of each other, but when we met each other, we were both kind of exploring Orthodoxy from different angles. And so having that relationship sort of help shape as I'm trying to understand what Orthodoxy is and if it's something that I should commit my life to was very helpful. But what I've noticed is that for him, because he kind of grew up more secular, he didn't have that religious baggage. There are certain things that are easier for him to adopt and take in than for me, because it's sort of like I'm having to rewire and re-understand this thing that I always felt like I knew. And yeah, there's always this sort of, there's this like, there's a good part of it. I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but there is this sort of difficulty of feeling like a child in it all again, especially at 30 years old, 30 something. You know, you're having to really feel like this thing that I thought I had, you know, a decent map on, all of a sudden it's becoming totally new for me. And that's exciting, but it's also sort of like, yeah, kind of terrifying in the same way, where you just feel like I don't know how to ground myself at all. Do you have that sense of not having that religious background where it feels like more of a freedom and a joy when you're exploring it? Or do you have a sort of trepidation with it too?
Well, I think indeed in some way it's better to, you know, like I know nothing, so I can take everything.
Well, whereas I realize I know nothing, but for my life I felt like I've known something. I don't know nothing, but I don't know anything. You know, and it's this like weird paradox where you kind of you really just have to like shut your pride off and realize like get lowered into that place where you're not in a place of like high status, really. You're just kind of at the bottom, and like you just sit and you learn. And like there's so much beauty to it and growth to it, but it's also difficult. I sort of get envious of people that don't have that that religious baggage, because there just becomes this sort of different sense of it. But like I think what the bigger thing is instead of just envious, I just get really grateful to like get to watch it and see it and learn from that perspective. So how has it been as you're kind of like finding your place in the church? How has that been with your family and your friends? Has that been an interesting journey of them seeing you transform and change?
Oh yeah, it really is. But I think they also don't understand it. Like sometimes they ask something, but it always stays on the surface, you know. Like we can't really talk like in depth about it, or like I don't even think they know that I really believe in God. Like sometimes I think they just think it's like a hobby or something, you know, like going to church and having like a community, and that's nice, but I feel they can't really understand that I really believe in God.
Yeah. And is that hard for you?
I think in the beginning it was harder than it is now.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you know, when you first go into the Orthodox Church and you read a few saints, then you think like, oh, I should leave everything and and go and live in a tent or something. So then I was also really like radical, like, oh, I don't want to be with friends who don't believe, or you know, like you have some weird thoughts about
Yeah.
things.
Like this extreme sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I think because we come from like atheists, and then you really want to have everything, you know, from from the church. But now it's I think a little bit more calm.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard, you know, like with family gatherings, and they want to celebrate Easter when you're in the middle of the Great Land, you know.
Yeah.
And then it took some time to figure out, like, okay, what should we do then? Should we not go? Should we go?
Right.
They don't even know what Easter is, so should we participate in their fake Easter, you know?
So is it more like the secular Easter bunny sort of Easter?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's something interesting too. I was talking to Ferdi a little bit about like the difference between Easter and Christmas, particularly in Protestant world. But I think in secular world as well, like Christmas feels very much like the high holiday in Protestantism, where not to say that it isn't a high holiday in Orthodoxy, but Easter kind of feels like the primary one, the you know, the highest, but there's sort of that switch within the two. And then, yeah, even within secular world, Christmas is very commercialized, and like there's so many people who celebrate even if they aren't quote unquote religious. And then it's obviously like changed and switched. It's a little bit different here because you guys have Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Where that becomes sort of like the Christmas high holiday. How does your family see those holidays? Do they see them as religious, or are they very secular in their understanding of them?
I think they don't really think about it being a religious holiday. No.
Yeah. It just
they just don't think about it. I have never thought about it. You know, in November we also have Saint Maarten. You know, it's an important saint for us in the church. I never knew it, and when I was a kid, I every year went by the doors and getting candy, but I never knew that it was like a saint or what was the story. It's the same for Sinterklaas. I don't know, but it's the same for Christmas. I knew Jesus was born, but I never knew who was Jesus. You know, I see like the Kerststal with like Mary,
the stable,
and Mary and Joseph and Jesus, but I don't know who they were. I never knew. I only know for like 3 years now.
Yeah. Is that strange now looking back at it, that you kind of had this sense but were totally uninformed by it? Or does it just feel like normal because that's...
Yeah, it feels... I think it feels really weird. Like, why are they not telling us what we are celebrating? And I think that's how most of the people in the Netherlands are. Like...
Yeah. No, it's so interesting because I think in America you get the sense that it's a very religious country, and that is true. And you oftentimes hear about Europe being very secularized, and that is also true. Yet there's something within the culture that feels much more religious here in Europe, in the Netherlands. I can't speak for all the countries, but at least here in the Netherlands than it did in America, where you have these traditions that are kind of held on to and built into the culture that people don't really even know are religious, but they still have these sort of remnants of it. Like the 3 kisses
Yeah.
when you greet people. You do 3 kisses for the women.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's for my husband was telling me it's for the Trinity.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's like for the Trinity, and it's sort of like the 3 kisses is supposed to be the recognition of your image bearing of God.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then my friend Paul Vanderklay, he was talking about some of the architecture and the way in these European cities you have the church in the center,
Yeah.
and then everything kind of comes out from around that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so religiously oriented and built into the DNA, which that doesn't exist in especially the newer American cities, but pretty much American cities in general, this real sense of that religious life built within the culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that really strange thing where you feel the religious process and the Christianity within certain things that people do and the way people live. But yeah, it's not believed or known or taught.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you start to notice things as you're becoming more religious, as you're learning more things about Christianity and having that more religious instinct? Do you start noticing more things about the culture?
Oh yeah, a lot.
Yeah. Do you have like examples? Because I'm just so fascinated by it. Because I'm still an outsider, picking up on certain things, but there's a lot of things I feel like I miss.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't really have...
Not off the top of your head.
No.
No. Yeah, it is really interesting though. But you get that sense though of that religious participation. Yeah. So how has that, I think, I'd love to know how it's changed you now of trying to kind of reorient yourself in, just like normal life and culture. Do you start to, do you find yourself changing a lot of what you do and how you live? Or do you think it's more just heightening sort of that religious tendency within how you have lived and you start learning more of that? Does that make sense? I don't know if the question makes sense.
Well, I think just my whole life changed.
Yeah.
Like, nothing really feels the same or is the same, because in everything you do, you feel like this is what God wants, or like what I don't know. You think a lot more about what you do, or I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think has changed the most about yourself?
I don't know. I think it's just more like a feeling inside. Yeah. Like, it's not really... I don't know if I would met someone like who I know from the past, if they would say like I changed, or... Like
that you're so different, but there's something...
I don't know, yeah. But
no.
I think for me the biggest change is inside. Yeah.
Oh, I totally resonate with that.
Yeah.
As I remember, there was this time, in my life, I grew up religious, right? All of the quote unquote right answers. You have this belief, you have this sense, yet having that switch of feeling like you would look at my life from the outside and, you probably wouldn't say much has changed or much is different, yet that internal sense of things changing totally flips things on its head.
Yeah.
So I know right now you're kind of thinking a lot about like your future and what you're going to do next. Mm-hmm. Does the religious part of you, does that factor into how you think about what you want to do for a job and a career and how you orient your life in that sort of world?
Oh yeah, that changed a lot, because before I became Christian, you know, I really was thinking about career, and then I even started a new study when I was like, I don't know, like 25 or something, and then then
Yeah.
you know, then I got a good job, and then I got a better job, and then at some point you feel like, oh, this is not it, and it also takes too much of your like peace. I don't
Mm.
know. Like too much of your attention is going to that, and I feel like totally have to figure it all out again, like what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a peace in that and an excitement in that of being able to figure it all out again?
Well, yeah, like I have to think about the quote that I just read. Like everyone has their place, and I feel really a peace in the fact that I don't have to rush it all. Like it
Mm-hmm.
will come to place at the time that God's want it to be the time, you
Yeah.
know. And I really feel like there is some place for me. I don't know yet what it is, but I will just, you know, I will see it. I I think that's also something that changes, because at first you really I feel like you have to think everything through yourself, like, oh, what do I want, what you
Right.
know, and then you see like you end up in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And then
Mm.
because you do it for the wrong reason, like, oh, uh, like earning a lot of money or something, and then you feel like this is not good, and then
Yeah, like
yeah.
there's a certain status game that ends up coming into that of like, well, what do I want?
Yeah.
Where the recognition of sometimes the place you need to be is not at all what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? Um, yeah. Yeah. I think it's so like it's so exciting to have that sense where all of a sudden you realize I the place that I was going is not the place I think I'm actually supposed to be moving towards.
Mm-hmm.
And taking that step and feeling that confidence of like, okay, well, to step away from this, even though it costs something, is actually going to move me more towards the thing that I'm meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there's always this place within that transition of like, I call it the no longer but not yet,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
where you're no longer the thing that you were that maybe, at that time it was a place to try this, but now all of a sudden your place has changed and shifted. Yet you're not exactly what you need to be to fulfill that role and fit into that place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, for you, do you ever have that sense of that in between, and how do you handle it? How do you navigate that?
Oh, yeah. I don't I don't really think too much about it. I just
That's really good.
yeah.
I'm a classic overthinker. It's always sort of like doing my mental roundabouts of like, how do you
Yeah.
navigate this?
Well, I had that feeling when I was working in the job that I didn't like,
Yeah.
and then I was like, okay, what am I doing here? What is the purpose of this?
Mm.
Should I quit my job? Like
Yeah.
you're thinking like all kinds of things, like what should I do? But
Yeah.
you know, then at one point I just felt on the inside like I can't go back in this job. Like it was really a feeling inside, like you know, I'm now at home with a burnout, but it wasn't really like a classical burnout, like, oh, I was overworked or something like that. I just felt like, oh, I can't go back in this job, and I felt like really heavy inside about it. And then And then there was my answer, like, okay, I need to quit this job, and then you know. So then always the answer will come, and now I have experienced that a few times. So then now I don't have to look for it myself. I will see like where I end up, or like
Yeah.
I will feel it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's a really good position to have. There's like that patience, there's that trust with
Yeah.
that. I feel like a lot of times that that tension we have within ourselves in those middle places is probably our own,
Yeah.
issues being projected onto it, and losing that sight of like, I don't know, this recognition that even though you may not feel like you're at the place you feel like you should be, you're probably in the exact place you should be at the time to get you prepared to move into a place that is more, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but more full. But yeah, there's, I don't know, there's just this kind of beauty in the struggle of that transformation, where it's like, if I don't know, and I've just moved so often, I've changed so much. I think particularly in the last 5 years, there is probably something within me that is drawn to that sense of like the constant change. But I think life becomes different, especially when you have a kid, where all of a sudden you're like, okay, it's not just me. Like there has to be a certain level of stability and like calmness and sense of confidence in moving towards this path for the sake of this other little person that lives in the world and that I've been given to protect. And we have the second one on the way too. And there's that, I don't know, I think for me in the last couple of years, that greater sense of feeling with them, that it becomes, I don't know, more imperative that I figure it out. But there's probably some truth in the realization of this pattern that, well, it's always worked out. You've always gone through that tradition or transition and figured out the place. Having that peace with that is probably something good for them too. What do you think would be different in your life if you hadn't gone down sort of this religious path?
Oh, I don't know.
No.
I always...
You think it was just sort of, that natural thing of like, it couldn't have been any way else. It just, that's how it came in your life.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, like, is it, for you, is it this feeling like it's hard to imagine what it would be like differently because just the way that it all kind of naturally came out, it couldn't have been any other way?
Yeah, on the one hand, I think that's true. But I also think, like, otherwise my life hadn't really changed really much. I think I just, Yeah, it's
such an interesting sense to feel like your life has completely changed, and yet at the same time it hasn't changed much at all. That's a really interesting process. And does that make it kind of difficult to explain sometimes, the transition that you feel? Because in some ways you feel your life is so different, yet how do you explain it?
Also because it's mostly on the inside. And the only thing that others can see is that you go to church every Saturday and every Sunday. That's the only thing. And also it's really hard to talk about your feelings, or like in how do you say that, like in the terms of the religion. Like, I can say to my parents like, oh, I'm doing fine, but you never really can go into depth, I feel. I only can say like, oh, I was in church this Sunday and we did this, or we had this feast, or like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Now, your mom has gone to church with you a little bit more.
Hmm.
Does she seem to understand the change more than the rest of your family?
I think so. Yes, I think she understands it a little bit more. But I have heard her saying that my dad also said to her, like, oh, they really changed, like me
Hmm.
and Johannes. But I hear it through my mom.
Yeah,
So
not
it's
directly.
no. And I don't really know like what it is that I changed in,
Hmm.
but
But they sense
they,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's that's really interesting. Um, I think I don't know because my parents are religious, but they were a little unsure when I became Orthodox. Like,
Hmm.
what are you doing? And I think they still probably have some unsureness. Although the longer it's been going, I think the more they've at least tolerated it, but started to understand pieces of it. But I always wonder of like I feel like I've changed so much coming into it. I always wonder if they sense it as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's really interesting to like have that sense of like feeling like your family is seeing this change, even if you don't know exactly
Hmm.
what it is that sparks. But I think sometimes it's really hard to even identify in words the things that are changing. Like, because a lot of times it's the smallest adjustments in things that change the most. So all of a sudden it's like, you know, like this internal sense of how are you feeling about something, like your internal mindset, or yeah, just a sense of belief in something changes not necessarily the action, but the way in which it grows. I think that's, I don't know, I just find that really interesting.
Hmm.
Does your mom seem to be more interested in religion now that you guys have been interested?
Um, well, I feel like that comes and it goes a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in the beginning, it was more maybe, but yeah, I I don't know really. Like in the beginning, she went with us to church a few times, but I think now when she's retired and she has some other things
Yeah,
to be occupied with, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
And her family, did they grow up Catholic? Because you said your
Yeah.
grandpa, that was the grandpa on that side.
Yeah.
Was your dad's family also Catholic?
No.
No. Were they Protestant or were they secular?
Yeah, no, they like my grandparents on my dad's side, they already had no religion, but their parents they were like, I don't know, different things, Protestant or
Mm.
Catholic. I think in the Netherlands it's a little bit mixed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, that's something too. There's, I mean, I think in every country there's definitely the Protestant Catholic divide.
Hmm.
But yeah, getting the sense of the history of it here and how split things are here. It's very interesting
Hmm.
in the way that it still infests culture where like, you know, above the river is what Protestant, right? And below the river is Catholic.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting. I'm sure there's patterns like that in America also.
Hmm.
But I don't know, it just feels very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that because they probably didn't have that religious background, it probably had a lot of effect on the way your father understood religion.
Yeah. It really has. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was really anti-religion.
yeah,
So at first when I went to church, he didn't want to know anything about it. But it's now in almost 3 years, it's fine. I can talk about church with him, and he said I have changed, so I think that's
yeah,
a positive thing about it.
yeah. I think there's always this sense of your idea of what the thing is, and then the reality is always so different. I mean, even when you're in religion, like the longer that you participate, the more you realize your idea of what the thing is not what it is, and they kind of need to be shattered so you can get a deeper sense of the reality of the thing.
Yeah. And I think when you don't grow up with it, you don't know anything about it, because the things that you know are almost always negative. That are the things that you remember. So that was the same for me. The only things I knew about Christianity were negative, because you remember negative things more than positive things. So I think it's the same for my father. He only knew some negative things about his youth, and that's the only thing you know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's probably the sense of you guys participating, being surprised by the positive things that he's never seen.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, if you watch the news, the only thing about religion that you hear is negative. So that was the first thing he came up with. Oh, like religion only causes war, and that's the thing
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, kind of being this blank slate, what's then the best way to learn about religion? Like, how for you has been the most helpful way to understand this new thing that is so foreign to you?
I think just going to church and just see other people around you, and I don't know, I feel like now there are a lot of new people in church, and some of them are taking it too hard on themselves. Oh, I should know everything, and I should be maybe a reader to get into this church, but I think the most that you learn is just by going to church and just participate in liturgy and in the other services. And now when I sing in the choir for like 2 years, and if you read all those texts that we are singing every week, I think that's where it is, like
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Just that sense of like when you come in and wanting to be maybe more than you need to be, right? I think it really goes back to that sense of place of like, well, we can't all be readers, because if we were all readers, then all we would be doing is reading. Like, there's all of these levels and these places of like, how do you find peace with the place that you're in, and still be open to being transformed to fit into a place that is different than where you started. And I think that's something me and Ferdy kind of are always wrestling with too, because as parents, we don't have always the ability, especially with young children, to be at every service and take on every responsibility. And so there's this recognition of like, our place is just as, people in the congregation, and how do you best do that and make space for that, and not get so caught up of trying to put yourself in a different place that no one's even asked you to be in. Right? And so there's that level of like learning how to be really good just lay people. I think that's been something really beautiful. But also I think also really difficult for me, because growing up in church, you're always trying to find ways to like help and be a part of the community deeper, and realizing you have the limitation of not always being able to be everywhere. It's humbling. It's a humbling thing, I think. But I agree with you. There's something about just going to the liturgy and allowing that to shape and learn and teach you something. And that's something I'm the more and more that I'm in it, the more I'm realizing how much tradition scales, where you can know all of the intricate details and the reasoning behind all of these things, yet there's still a sense of like knowing and participating that can happen on just a level of being there and hearing it, and like just letting what sinks in sink in. Yeah.
You know, like 2,000 years ago, people couldn't even read.
Right.
You know,
right.
So they had to learn it from just going to church and just you know, listen to the reading of the gospel. You know.
No, I think it's such a good point. I think about that all the time, where we have more information at our fingertips than ever before, but it's sort of like religion was transforming people's lives way before we had all of the quote unquote answers to all of these questions. And you know, there was something sort of beautiful about allowing that transformation of like hearing it and participating in it and letting that lead affect even the way that you would learn about the deeper senses of it. I think that's been, out of anything, the most helpful thing for me in my transition from Orthodoxy, where it really was, you know, participation first, and then allowing that to shape and then open the door to like deeper types of learning. But you're taking a theology course right now.
Yeah.
How has that been in that transition of like, you've done 3 years of basically participation, and now all of a sudden you're getting a more formal education on the religion, and how is that shaping you?
Oh well, it's a lot. Yeah. And some of the things I don't even understand. Like it's then I understand, like, okay, there are different places, different, you know, like, and I think it's okay that I don't understand everything. Like all those really deep theological things, like,
well, you can't understand it all. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Do you do the courses in English or in English?
Yes.
Does that make it harder? Or has it been sort of, you've done enough of sort of learning in English in the religious space that it makes it?
Well, yeah, it always makes it harder if it's not your like mother language. So, but
well, it's really interesting for Ferdy. He obviously speaks Dutch, but he's been speaking English for so long and lived in different countries. There are certain topics like religion where he almost prefers to learn in English, because that's how he started having those conversations and those languages, where it's like he never really talked about religious stuff in Dutch.
Yeah.
And so in some ways he kind of prefers that English foot for the religious world. But
yeah, I can understand. And also because there is a lot of more to read in English.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I feel like in Dutch translations they even use different words for, you know, like one time you read another word for, I don't know. But in English it's a little bit more settled, I think.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, I still have that difficulty of like figuring out how to really ground in the Dutch services, because our liturgy is in Dutch, and you know, anywhere I go, I'm not going to be able to understand the liturgy because it's either Slavonic, Greek, or Dutch. There's not many services in English. But yeah, having that sense of like the melodies helps me ground a little bit of recognizing, okay, this is where we are in the service, and slowly picking things up. But yeah, I could totally resonate with that sense of like it even being harder to understand when it's not in your mother language.
Yeah.
But I feel like with Orthodoxy, it's always going to be difficult in Dutch because it's such a, you know, it's not as big of a language. So the things that are being translated into it and worked into it from the Orthodox world is always going to be the smaller pool.
Yeah.
Than, I mean, even like Greek or Russian, but particularly English also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has it have you seen positive things about trying to learn it in a different language, though? Has it sometimes helped you click certain things?
No, not really.
Just
I
confuse you.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that once you finish this course, there'll be like more of an interest to keep studying in sort of the religious way, or do you kind of want to step back and go back to more of that participation sense?
Oh yeah, I think this is more of like a basis. Like, oh, these are a few things I need to know, and yeah, but I will keep like reading, but all those deep theological things I will I will leave it
Leave it
behind.
to,
Yeah.
leave it to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. Let's see. Yeah, we can slowly wind it down. Is there anything else that you want to add that you have thought about, or was there any other passages in the book that stuck out to you?
For now, no.
No. Okay. Well, no, I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for sharing your story and let me ask deeper questions. I mean, I know a lot. We're friends in real life, so I know a lot of stuff, but it's always so interesting to be able to sit and ask more specific questions of your journey and, you know, hear the answers again and kind of learn more about you. So I really appreciate you sitting there, and yeah, I love that passage you had. I'll be thinking about that for a while.
Walking through the forgotten garden, seems like rain